Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we will be talking about sleep training. I know it's a controversial topic, but sleep training worked for me and my son, who is now 12 months old. And so I wanted to share with you what I learned and what worked for us. So first things first, what worked for us is the Ferber Method. It's also called the cried out method. And where I want people to start is to read this book. You can read it, which is Richard Ferber, who is the doctor, which is why it's called the Ferber Method. It's his book, and it's called Solve Your Child's Sleep Problems. And it's a really quick read. I know it's huge, but you really just search for the topics that are pertinent to you. And this really helped me understand the cried out method. When my son was first born, he would not sleep anywhere but on someone's chest. And really that meant he only slept on my husband's chest because I could not let him sleep on me. I could not sleep when he slept on me. I was super nervous. I thought I'd roll over or drop him off the bed or something. So he really slept on my husband's chest for the first 3 weeks of his life. And then we transitioned him to the Halo Bassinet, which was right next to my side of the bed. He did not sleep through the night until we started sleep training. So 3 months rolled around and I thought, okay, for sure he's got to start sleeping through the night. And then 4 months rolled around and then 5 months rolled around and I thought, I've got to get some sleep. I've got to figure out a way to get some sleep. So I started researching sleep methods, and one of my friends from high school had done this sleep method, and so I reached out to her and asked her for more detail, and she sent me to this book. And this book really has some great information on why sleep training is important and helpful to your kid. So what I want to do is just read an excerpt from the book to kind of help you understand why sleep associations matter, and really an analogy that'll kind of help you understand why we need to break sleep associations, which is really one of the reasons why your child cannot fall asleep on their own and sleep through the night. Because when they wake up in the middle of the night, they can't put themselves back to sleep. They require the sleep association that they're used to. So whether that be rocking or nursing or holding them to sleep, that's why they can't fall asleep. They haven't learned how to fall asleep on their own. So I want to read a quick example that might help you understand from the book. And I'll link the book down below too if you're interested in purchasing it. So perhaps you've had an experience of waking up during the night just enough to notice your pillow missing. Most likely, instead of going straight back to sleep, you waken a little more, enough to find the pillow on the floor and pull it back into bed before returning to sleep. But if you couldn't find it right away, you probably wouldn't be able to ignore it and go back to sleep. Instead, you'd become more fully awake so you could look around for it. If you still couldn't find it, eventually you might turn on the light, get out of bed, and begin searching the room. You might get angry and perhaps curse, showing the same kind of frustration that your child shows by crying. Even if your pillow falls out of your bed once or twice every night, it will hardly disturb your sleep. Retrieving the pillow from the floor doesn't require you to wake up very much or for very long. But suppose that you are physically unable to get the pillow yourself and you have to call someone else, perhaps a nurse, to come into the room to replace it whenever you wake up and find it missing. The nurse will soon learn that once you have your pillow back, you'll fall asleep quickly, but your frequent wakings during the night might seem abnormal to him or her. To stretch the analogy a bit further, suppose you discover that someone has been sneaking into your room each night and stealing your pillow. Once you know that, you might have trouble falling asleep at bedtime for fear that the pillow will be taken away as soon as you're asleep. Whenever you catch yourself starting to fall asleep, you might wake yourself up again to make sure that the pillow is still there. Now imagine that this person, instead of just taking your pillow, actually moves you from your bed to another room without waking you. Every night you go to sleep in your bed with everything just as you like it, only to wake up after your first sleep cycle on, say, the floor of the living room. Unless you're an exceptionally tolerant sleeper, you won't even try to go back to sleep right away. You'll get up and head back to your room. But now suppose you find your bedroom door locked from the other side. Now there's nothing you can do but wake someone who can unlock the door for you. Once that's been done, you can at last get back into bed and get your pillow and blanket arranged properly thereby reestablishing the conditions that were present at bedtime. Once you calm down, you will fall back asleep, but some 90 minutes later, you'll wake up again, back on the living room floor, and again locked out of your bedroom. If that happens throughout the night, every night, you will not be able to sleep well at all, and neither will the person who has to keep getting up to unlock the door. Soon you might be resisting sleep in the hopes of identifying the person who keeps moving you. In other words, you might have trouble falling asleep even in your own bed because you know that you'll be moved once you fall asleep. If that happened to you every night, you wouldn't be very happy. As you've probably recognized, the last scenario describes what actually happens to many children every night. They fall asleep in one place, maybe being held and rocked in the living room with the television and a small light on, but whenever they wake up, they find themselves in a different place under different conditions, perhaps alone in the crib, in the dark, quiet room, not being held and not being rocked. Someone has stealthily moved them. They cannot reestablish the conditions that were present when they fell asleep, so they must cry and yell until someone comes in and does it for them. They must be picked up, brought back to the rocker, maybe even taken back into the living room with a television, and no sooner are they asleep than someone moves them again. Soon these children start resisting sleep, and each time they wake, they find that the change has happened anyway. So that's just really an analogy of sleep associations and why children wake up. Because they were put to sleep one way and then they wake up in the middle of the night and they're not in that same sleep condition. So they cry so that they get rocked again or nursed again or fed again or bounced again, and then they're put back to sleep that same way and then they wake up again. So this book is super helpful in explaining things and helping you understand why sleep training is important and why it's important to get kids to fall asleep on their own. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessary to help your kids fall asleep, but this really helped my son. A quick backstory too. When my son was first born, quick sip of coffee, I swore that my son did not cry to relieve tension. He built tension as he cried. So he would cry and then he would get more worked up and he'd cry again and then he'd work more, and he would get so upset that it would be really hard to calm him down. So I thought for sure the cried out method would not work because he would just get so excited, so worked up that he'd never be able to go back to sleep. But I'll tell you, if that's what your child is like, this method can work for you. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on this method and how it worked for us. So when we first decided to start sleep training, we transitioned my son to his own room. So I knew that it would not work to have my son in the room with us if we wanted to start sleep training because I would most likely wake him up or I'd be tempted to pick him up. So I knew we had to transition him to the crib. So the first time that we did this sleep training was at 5 months, and we transitioned him to his crib at that point, which was hard enough, right? So we transitioned him to the crib, and we also did several other things. So we introduced a lovey to him. We used the Aiden and I muslin lovey, and it's just a square of muslin, and it has like a satin trim around it, which I felt safe giving him because it was very breathable and it was small and I wasn't concerned about it wrapping around him. I wasn't concerned about him suffocating with it. So we did introduce that lovey, and he still uses that lovey to this day for naps and for bedtime. So we introduced a lovey as well. We also have a sound machine that we've used since he was in the room with us. So we use the Dome sound machine, which produces white noise, which also helps him fall asleep. So we do have that in his room as well. And also, when he was in his room, in his bassinet, we used the DockATot with him as well. And I know that the DockATot is not supposed to be used in the bassinet. We did use it in the bassinet without issue. I'm not recommending that, but I'm just saying that that worked for us. We moved the DockATot from the bassinet to his crib as well when we first transitioned him to the crib. So that is something that we used as well. And the other thing that was an issue for us is he was nursing in the middle of the night. So at that point I was nursing, and he was probably nursing 4, 5, 6 times a night. And so what I did want to start doing was reducing those nursing sessions. At 5 months, I wasn't interested in removing all of the nursing sessions. I thought he needed at least one nursing session in the middle of the night. So my goal wasn't to cut nursing sessions out, my goal was just to reduce the nursing sessions so I wasn't so exhausted from waking up like every hour to 2 hours. So my goal was to reduce to one nursing session a night at 5 months. And this Ferber book does give you an example of how to reduce feedings or nursing. And what it does is that every night you reduce the amount of ounces that the baby takes if you're giving a bottle, or reduces the amount of time that you're nursing, the time in between nursing. So if you wake up 2 hours after you last nursed and you nurse him, then you wait 2.5 hours. That's kind of the process to reduce your nursing. So that was one thing that I tried to tackle at the same time as this process, but I'm just going to scroll in the book and get to this. So there's a figure in the book, the number of minutes to wait before you're responding to your child. So the first key is that make sure that you have a consistent bedtime routine, a consistent calming bedtime routine. So what we do is every other night we have a bath, and then we play in his room a little bit, we read a book, he gets a bottle, and then we read. So we did cut the association of milk or bottle and bedtime. So he used to fall asleep while nursing, so we would nurse and then we would read, so he wasn't falling asleep on the breast, and then putting him to bed. So that's a key as well. And this detail is all in this book, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but essentially you have different waiting times every night that you're going to go in and check on your child. So the first night you wait, if your baby is crying for 3 minutes after you put him down, then you go back up and you console them. Now the book says do not pick them up. You can just pat them on the back, you can say something calming. We would say, shh, it's okay, go to sleep, shh, mama and daddy are right here. And after you're in there for a minute or two, then you leave the room. And if they're still crying 5 minutes after that, then you go back in and you do the same thing. After that, you do 10 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 10 minutes, and 10 minutes, until your baby falls asleep. There were times where I did pick up my child, so I didn't always just do the calming, pat, and go to sleep kind of thing. We did pick him up sometimes. It's not said, not something that you're supposed to do according to the book, but we did that. Really just do whatever is good for you. So the first night is 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and then the next night you extend that by a few minutes. So when you put your child down, if he or she is still crying after 5 minutes, then you check them and you console them, and then you go back 10 minutes later, 12 minutes, and then continuing on at 12-minute intervals until they fall asleep. Now you should see a difference in your child falling asleep in probably 3 to 4 days. At least that was our experience. We noticed a change pretty quickly. They don't cry as long. And another key is your child's cry. So if they're kind of just fussing in the crib, we didn't go in and check on him until he was actually crying and we knew that we would need to go check on him. So if he was just taking breaks or just kind of fussing or rolling around in bed, we didn't count that towards our minute countdown to go check on him. So you will see a difference in a couple of days. What I did, because I'm a little anal, is I tracked everything. Now I do have a tracker on my phone that we used when my son was younger, and it was called Baby Connect. That was the app, and that was where we would track all of his nursing sessions, all of his diaper changes, and his sleep. So I would track everything on the app as well, so I'd have a record of it. But I really wanted to physically see the difference. I wanted to write everything down on paper. So let's see if I can get this to focus. So what I did was I mapped everything out on paper. Hopefully you can see that. So there's actually a chart in the book as well that you can use to chart, but really I charted when he napped during the day, when he woke up, and when he fell asleep. So the first night we did sleep training, he woke up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He woke up 5 times in the middle of the night, and it took him probably, let's see, maybe like 30 minutes to fall asleep initially. The second night, it took him even longer to fall asleep. It probably took him like 45 minutes to fall asleep, but he only got up 3 times in the middle of the night. The next night, it only took him 10 minutes to fall asleep, and he woke up 3 times in the middle of the night again. Then the 1, 2, 3, then the 4th night, he only woke up once. The 5th night, he woke up twice. 6th night, twice. 7th night, twice. 8th night, twice. So by the end of the week, he was only waking up twice in the middle of the night, which I was perfectly fine with him waking up twice in the middle of the night, and I would nurse him those 2 times, and he would go back down to sleep. I was not concerned about nursing him to sleep in the middle of the night. That didn't concern me, and it didn't seem to affect his sleeping. So fast forward, we had done the sleep training at 5 months. He was waking up twice in the middle of the night. And then it started creeping up again. So he was starting to teeth. We were kind of coddling him a little bit more. We were letting him fall asleep on the boob. And towards the end, the bottle, because he started to transition to formula, he really started rejecting nursing. That could be a whole nother story. And so we decided at around 9 months to sleep train again. And we were already pretty much doing what we should be doing, but we weren't strict about his check-in. So he would start crying, and we'd just go in and pick him up and rock him back to sleep, and then we'd put him back in the crib. And we got into that habit, and it wasn't a good habit to have. So at 9 months, we started sleep training again. And it took 3 days. 3 days of sleep training, and he slept through the night. And he's been sleeping through the night ever since, with some exceptions. So of course, once your child sleeps through the night, it does not mean that they're going to sleep through the night every night. They'll get sick, they'll be teething, you'll be traveling, you'll be in a different environment, in a different place for them to sleep. All of that impacts sleep. But for the most part, my son sleeps through the night. He'll go to bed between 7 and 8. Usually it's like 7:15, 7:30. He'll fall asleep. And he'll wake up between 6 and 6:30 in the morning. He'll sleep straight through, no feedings. And I attribute that all to the Ferber sleep method. This book, Solve Your Child's Sleep Problems, excellent book. I recommend you read it, and I recommend you try the method. You can do whatever works for you. If you want to pick up your child, if you want to reduce the minutes in between check-ins, you can do that. I think that this plan is extremely flexible. I do want to say there is a misnomer about this method. It is not that you just set your child in your crib and you let them cry and cry and cry and cry until they fall asleep. You check in on them. You can pick them up, you can coddle them. The key is that you want them to fall asleep on their own, so that they learn how to fall asleep on their own, so that when they wake up in the middle of the night, they don't need you to fall back asleep. And I think that's extremely important. And I think that's all I really wanted to talk about when it came to sleep training. If you have any specific questions on sleep training, please let me know. This was what worked for us. It may not work for you, but I've heard great things from a lot of people on this method. And again, it's more painful on you than it is on them. So thank you for listening. This might be a long video. I apologize. If you have any questions, let me know. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for the next video, and I'll see you later. Bye.